and their sustainability. The U.S. Conference of Mayors Business Council plays a vital role within the Conference of Mayors, and I, along with my fellow members of the Business Council, we deeply appreciate the relationships that we have cultivated at these meetings, for we do understand that your time is precious, especially navigating these uncharted territories. Recent events such as the tragic situation in New Orleans and the devastating fires in Los Angeles, these times remind us that the resilience and the strength required to lead during these times of crisis come through our mayors. Our thoughts and prayers are with Mayor Bass and the City and County of Los Angeles as they confront these challenging times. As we gather here today, I wish all the mayors, Business Council members a productive and inspiring meeting. Let us continue to work together to empower our communities, uplift small business, and create lasting, impactful change. Thank you for the opportunity to serve as your co-chair for this Business Council and for the unwavering support you all have gathered around me. From my colleagues at Wells Fargo, a big thank you for undergirding me this past year and a half. We look forward to great things together because only together can we achieve great things. Thank you.
Thank you, Quentin, for your incredible leadership and partnership with Wells Fargo and the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Before we begin our first discussion, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge and express our gratitude to a platinum partner of the conference, the Walton Family Foundation, for their steadfast support and invaluable partnership. This morning, the Walton Family Foundation is proudly represented on stage by CityWorks DC. This is one of the many organizations it supports to foster integrated approaches among K-12 schools, higher education institutions, and employers to provide students with high-quality learning opportunities directly connected to future career pathways. Moderating our discussion today on this work is someone with a depth of experience in city government. She was a tenured teacher for 12 years and served as DC's Deputy Mayor for Education for 3 years. Please join me in welcoming President and CEO of CityWorks DC, Jenny Niles, Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, and Tulsa Mayor Monroe Nichols IV for our panel on unlocking opportunity, career pathways to social and economic mobility.
Great. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Wow, this is great. It's really nice to see you. I'm from DC, so please welcome to Washington if you are from here. But I'm really excited for a brief discussion about career pathways and how career pathways form the backbone of economic mobility for our young people in our communities. Today we have both the mayor of Tulsa and Denver who have extensive experience both personally and with their cities about creating career pathways for students and young people and other adults. And so I am looking forward to the conversation this morning. And as leaders in your cities, you know the tremendous potential that you have in the cities, but you also know the barriers that often prevent that potential from being realized. And as was mentioned, at CityWorks DC, we see firsthand how clearly working across in collaboration with government, nonprofits, businesses, and schools, how that can transform lives. But it's not actually just about having young people and adults get jobs. It's about having them be able to be equipped with the skills, the confidence, and the agency to thrive in a rapidly changing economy and to create the local talent pipeline to power that economic growth. Today, we will hear about some exciting foster innovative partnerships from Tulsa and Denver. I'm excited to hear from the distinguished panel. So first, hello.
Good morning. Good morning.
Would you guys first just introduce yourselves, and then I'm gonna here's the question that I'll ask you.
Great.
How is your city leveraging career pathways to foster social and economic mobility? And can you share an example? So Mike.
Sure. Good morning. Great to see you all. I'm delighted that we got the wake-up session first thing in the morning.
Right.
Especially impressed to see those of you that I also saw closing down the lobby bar last night. So the fact that you are here again this morning shows your commitment. I think for us, there are a couple of populations that I think are most urgent around trying to provide access to social mobility, and I think I might talk about two of them. One is obviously we talked yesterday some about immigration. We were the largest recipient of newcomers of any city in the country per capita over the last year, about 40,000 individuals that arrived in our city. And all of those folks arrived with the same dream, which was, can I get a job? All I want is access to work. And so we found particularly with those who arrived that were asylum seekers, we realized they had a very hard time to find a path to work. And so we started a two-pronged program. One was to first proactively file an asylum application for each of them, because what was currently happening is when you arrive in the city, most folks had a court date for the year 2031. And they could not work until that court date. So they're in your city on a 7-year wait for a slow immigration system with no path to support themselves. So we proactively put them through an asylum application with the understanding that once you apply, you can get work authorization in 180 days. And so with that 180-day window, we said, well, folks could just sit and wait, or we could actually use this as a chance to really design a thoughtful workforce training program. And so we launched the Denver Asylum Seeker Program. We went to all of our employers in the city and said, what are the highest demand jobs that we have that we can't fill right now, and what training do folks need to enter those jobs? And so we created pathways. Folks could choose which pathway they wanted. That included everything from construction to hospitality to health to early childhood education. We did language skills, we did digital literacy, financial literacy. People were able to get certificates if they had certificates in those industries like CPR or others, get some on-the-job exposure and experience. And at the end of that 180 days, when their workforce authorization arrives, we connected them to a hiring fair with local employers who were at that point waiting for them to be able to enter the workforce. We just had that graduation a few weeks ago, and we've now are putting all of those folks to work on high-needs jobs in the city. So for us, that was a great example of a place where what seemed like a challenge of just folks who were here and couldn't currently support themselves, for us with the right workforce program became a pathway to opportunity that both supported our businesses and supported folks that were the furthest from opportunity.
Thanks.
All right, great. Well, good morning. And while I won't call you out like Mayor Johnson did for being out late, I will say, however, if he saw you out late, it's true. That means that he was also out late. So I thank you for your commitment as well, Mr. Mayor. Monroe Nichols from Tulsa. I guess where I would take this this question is certainly kind of thinking about the same types of things. I've been mayor a little over 6 weeks now, so we are experts in this. We figured it all out in Tulsa. But before I was elected, I co-founded an organization called Impact Tulsa, which is our place-based cradle-to-career partnership, where we're taking all the different stakeholders in our community related to children and youth and outcomes, from the time a child is born to the time they go to work, and figuring out what are the leaks along that pipeline. One area that we found, and this is the connectivity between this conversation around economic mobility and getting better outcomes, particularly on the workforce side, it's something we're currently engaged in right now. So like so many of you, we're dealing with the housing affordability crisis in Tulsa. I think the numbers are 46% of our folks in Tulsa are cost burdened by housing costs. And what that is driving is actually some real problems in the education system, particularly around those young people who are in families facing eviction. What we found is those kids who are in these families, they tend to be younger, right? So their parents tend to be younger. But the devastating impact it has on chronic absenteeism is 50% after the first month and 70% after the first year. And so what we start to do is say, hey, where we have these challenges, we have like a twofer, if you will, where we have an affordable housing challenge. We obviously have a workforce and income challenge. How are we then almost doing some of the same stuff that the mayor talked about, connecting those parents who, again, tend to be younger, because we're talking about a lot of kids in pre-K and some of those early literacy stages, connecting them directly to those workforce opportunities directly associated with the job, typically directly associated with a job that is somewhere within their community. So matching that skill with proximity even has been critical. It's actually really funny. After I took office, I reached out to the director of workforce programs at Tulsa Community College, someone who I knew very well because it's my mother. So my mom and I, are doing this work along with a number of partners. And I think the big thing that we've found in Tulsa is that we are really trying to connect a bunch of different systems that aren't really connected. They aren't part of the same system. And so holding that accountability for the outcomes on the back end has been a big part of the conversation and a focus of the work to this point.
That's great. Thank you, Mayor Nichols. Mayor Johnston, what unique challenges has Denver faced in implementing and scaling career pathways? You guys have been at it for a number of years, and it was great to hear that example of the new folks who are moving in, but would love to hear what innovative approaches might be taken to other places too.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work in the apprenticeship space for about 10 or 15 years. I was a school principal before I got into this job and a high school teacher, and so I've done a lot of work with youth programming. We have a program called CareerWise, which probably is replicated in some of your cities, which is connecting high school students to long-term apprentice opportunities. I think what we are trying to do is exactly that. It's how do you scale to a much larger number of young people? And we think as part of our global youth vision, kind of as both a youth violence prevention as well as a positive youth development strategy, we think for high schoolers, work is the best way to do both of those. I happen to have 2 high school students in my family, and it turns out that it takes an act of Congress to get them out of bed if I'm getting them ready for school. If they have a job to go to, somehow they are up and out the door on time to make sure to get there before they check in so their boss doesn't yell at them. And so we think not just as a way to build life skills to be able to make some income to support your family, but also a way to be able to identify and explore career paths. And so we've launched, Tony Anderson is here from our team, who's been the visionary behind this project. But we've launched a program called the Mayor's Youth Works program, which is focused on how we get more young people, particularly young people in high school, who may be at risk of getting themselves in trouble over the summer, into summer jobs, and particularly focused on small businesses, small local businesses where you're going to be mentored by someone who is from the community, who has built a business, who is going to take you under her wing and let you know what it takes to start or maintain or run a business. And so our idea was simple, that we could stimulate more and more businesses to hire young people if we covered half the costs. We wanted them to have skin in the game, so what we'd say is we'll pay half their summer salary, you pay half their summer salary. A lot of small businesses can't add more staff right now. If they had capacity, they would. But by us covering half of the cost, it means they're now more incentivized to take on a summer worker. That young person gets job exposure, makes some money, gets some training, and gets authentic connection to some leadership opportunities. And so we piloted that last year. We'll expand it this summer to about 2,000 high school students, with the goal that if we can push towards every high school student having a work opportunity between their summers, that they're far more likely to both see themselves in those roles in the future, and we think pick up another adult mentor in their life who's more than likely to be able to help them grow and probably help them show up to places on time.
Thanks. And I should admit that, so I run the CareerWise DC program, and I'm definitely a huge supporter of youth apprenticeship in all its different forms, and have been to Denver many times to try and learn as much as we can. Mayor Nichols, what role has local businesses, schools, and community organizations played in creating successful career pathways?
I mean, significant. You know, what everybody's starting to figure out in Tulsa is that you can't do it by yourself, right? And I think the big conversation that we've had is around not everybody can start a program in August and then finish a program in December, start a program in August and finish in May. The entry and exit points become really, really critical. And so then the question becomes, what does somebody absolutely need to do this job well? And then how much do you learn by being mentored on the job, right? And so we've been really aggressive over the years, and certainly this is from my time as a state legislator, really aggressive over the years in partnering with businesses around specialized training, right? So if we don't have the programs at the tech system, at the community college, right? How can we invest in the businesses running those training programs, as long as those programs are turned on the back end, into employment? And I think that's been really critical. One area that we're moving into in my time as mayor right now is being really aggressive on some of the outcomes financing work, right? So working with, getting ready to work with Maycomb Capital and some of those folks. So these pay for success programs where, they take a lot of the risk of the upfront investment, and to the extent that we reach those outcomes, which is everything from making sure folks are not only trained and get the credential, but go on to work and are there after a year, right? And then we at the city are then investing in the fact that we don't have to do the R&D, for example, right? And that's been a big focus of ours. We've seen it work in other places, right? And not just on the workforce side, you see it, it's been in mental health, it's been in early child education. It certainly is applicable on the workforce development side. And I don't know if there's anybody here, I don't know if the mayor of Boston is here, but Boston had a really great example of this in actually training folks in the immigrant population and getting them to the point where on average, wages are up $21,000, I think, a person, an 88% placement and retention rate in work. And it's because you then are able to partner better with the community. And we're all just talking about how we focus on outcomes because, my time as a legislator, and I think we can also see this sometimes within our cities, we don't always have the best data to drive outcomes, especially in small tests of change. And this is one of the ways and approaches that we're getting ready to launch in Tulsa to do just that.
Excellent. Well, with just a few minutes left, looking ahead, how do you see this work evolving, Mayor Johnston?
I think for us, the question is how do you customize the workforce need to the population you're most trying to help? And so for us, another really critical population we're supporting is folks who were formerly homeless. So we've had a real focus citywide. I declared state of emergency day one when I became mayor. We've focused over the last 18 months on trying to get folks out of street homelessness and into housing. And we've been able to have great success there. We've moved now 2,300 people off the streets and into transitional housing. We've closed every major encampment in the city. All of our downtown, now 500 square blocks, has gone more than a year without a single tent or encampment in it in downtown. We've decreased street homelessness for families by 83%, tent homelessness by more than 50%. Those are all great first steps, but we get folks into transitional housing, and the real question is only how can you get back up on your feet and get a job so you can support yourself? And so for us, it's about now launching a workforce navigation center for each of those individuals that helps identify what are the soft skills you need and what are the hard skills you need. How do we help you get closed? How do we help you prepare for an interview? And how do we help defray the risk for an employer? Knowing if you are going to bring someone on that's had a non-traditional background, how do we incentivize those folks to take risk on our partners? Because we help train them, we help prepare them, we'll help support them, and if they're not successful, we'll help find you another employee that can fill that gap. And so we provide incentive programs to discount the cost for those employers and a lot of front-end training. We think if we can help folks get back into work from those populations that are toughest to serve, they're in the best position to support themselves, to save us money on resources, and to also get their lives back together.
Yeah. Mayor Nichols, same question.
Yeah,
How do you see the work evolving?
Yeah, I think the work has to evolve with those of us in this room carrying the unique role around building strong partnerships, as I said, from cradle to a career, so from the time a kid is born to the time they're going to work. And where we see these gaps, holding that true accountability and making sure we're addressing them, because we have, in a place where all these systems have to work together, mayors in your teams are in a unique role to be the folks who are knitting it and then holding accountability for are we getting better or not, and having clear ways in which we understand it. I think that, I always say it's, differentiated responsibility and shared accountability, right? Like we all have different jobs to do. And if we do them well, every one of the challenges that we face on the workforce side was probably an education challenge, but in most cases, we're talking about a family where there's a two-generation approach necessary, so you're working on both ends. And so I do think the cradle-to-career work is actually where we need to be headed, and I think it actually lifts up the role of a mayor because it is so proximate to communities, and we just have unique roles and ways in which we can hold the accountability to make sure we get better outcomes.
Thank you. Thanks for the inspiring vision, description of the programs that you're working on, and the acknowledgement that mayors are in this really unique role of being able to pull together a disparate system that often doesn't work together. And its workforce, it's not just about a job, although that's one of the key pieces, but it's about making the whole community be able to work and with the economic growth. So thank you so much, and we are ending on time.
Awesome.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks.
Any reaction stage left?
Yep.
Just like President Biden, you just sort of exited.
Thank you, mayors, and all of our partners. Some great conversation this morning, and so proud of the work that's taking place in Tulsa, Denver, and cities across the country. Now we're honored to welcome back a very special friend to me and to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, a Ukrainian mayor who is one of our brothers in a land not far from here. But times of war test the strength of cities and their leaders. The world has watched as the people of Ukraine have faced the largest attack on a European country since World War II. As mayors, we've been inspired by their resilience and unwavering courage. As Americans, we are thankful for their fight to uphold democracy and freedom. Since the very beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the United States Conference of Mayors has made it clear that we stand with the brave Ukrainians fighting for their freedom and for their lives. We passed a resolution condemning Russia's invasion and pledging to take whatever supportive action is possible in our cities. Last year, we hosted this mayor to introduce the Unbroken Initiative, which seeks to unite U.S. and U.K. mayors in support of Ukraine. Now we look forward to hearing an update on this important initiative. It is so important for us to keep the story of the Ukrainian people front and center here in Washington and in our cities all across America. A dear friend, a brother of this conference, please welcome Mayor Andrei Sadovyi.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, dear mayors, Mayor of Columbus, Andrew Ginter. Thank you for invitation. It is a great honor for me to speak to you. First of all, I want to express my condolences families who lost loved ones in North Carolina and California. I understand your pain. Every day, Russia launch rocket and launch drone and killed civilian people in Ukraine and damage, destroy critical infrastructure, schools and hospital. Last September, a Russian combined attack damaged 189 buildings in my city, killed 8 civilian people, including family Basilevich, young mother with 3 daughters. I understand your pain. On behalf of my citizens and Ukrainian mayors, I want thank you. Thank you for support Ukrainian people. Thank you for support Ukraine. It is very important for me and very important for Ukraine. Thank you. I am mayor of Lviv, capital of culture of Ukraine, capital of IT of Ukraine, 1 million population, very great city. This year, Lviv hosts European Youth Capital, but Russian invasion totally changed my life. We have very tough moment. Every day, my citizens must spend time in shelters, but Lviv more safe than different Ukrainian cities. Location 70 kilometers near Polish border and 1,000 kilometers from front line. Lviv today huge humanitarian hub, and Lviv hosts internally displaced people, and Lviv hosts wounded. We built in my city a unique ecosystem of humanity unbroken. What is unbroken? High-level quality surgery, rehabilitation, prosthetics, unbroken sport, unbroken art. It is very important ecosystem for my country. I want to share with you a story about one family Stepanenko, from small village, New York, Donetsk region. During evacuation, Russian missiles attacked Kramatorsk railway station, and Where is first slide? The second slide, please, first. Oh. Family Stepanenko. Yana lost both legs. His mother lost one leg. Family Stepanenko spent a long time in our hospital. I remember my first conversation with Yana. Very beautiful girls without both legs, mother without leg. Yana lost father. I am father. After conversation with Yana, I cried. But I made promise for myself. You must be like father for Yana and 100 Ukrainian children who lost normal future. After rehabilitation in Lviv, Yana has rehabilitation in San Diego Hospital, and Yana ran in Boston Marathon last May. It is amazing. I cried, but I was happy. Thank you, David, from organization One World Strong. Thank you, colleague from State Department, about support this visit, Yana, to Boston, to Marathon. Today, Yana inspire Ukrainian people, Ukrainian children, and Ukrainian soldiers. We pay very strong price for our freedom. But my city development, we invest money to education, we invest money to IT, but during war we transform our IT community, it is big community, 40,000 people, to defense community. And today we have good production drone, anti-drone system, different military equipment. And for me, very interesting have collaboration with American company. But today we have very huge experience. Next moment, resilience. You know this word, resilience, but I understand very deeply this word. But we continue to live during different attack. We build alternative system, supply water, supply electricity, and we already share with American mayors our experience. I think it is very important for us. And for me, very important, build 1,000 bridges between American company, Ukrainian company, and between our communities. Together with Mayor Manchester and Mayor Liverpool, we found special network, Unbroken Cities. Last partner city Kaohsiung and from Taiwan, and city Oslo, different city. I ready, and my privilege, invite you to our community. We ready share our experience, and we need your experience about veteran police policy and a lot of different topics. We must be together. Today in Ukraine, we thinking about future. I am optimist. I believe in our future. I believe in democracy. I believe in America. I believe in Ukraine. Never give up. Only victory. God bless America. God bless Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. It is so powerful to hear your words and the stories of the amazing, wonderful, resilient people of Ukraine, and we will continue to use every power and resource we have to keep telling that story. It's truly a pleasure for me this morning to introduce a top leader of Target, a platinum partner of our organization. Today's guest and Senior Vice President for Risk and Government Relations is a familiar face for mayors attending our national meetings. Please join me in welcoming Target's Isaac Reyes. Isaac?
Thank you, Mayor Ginther, and good morning. It's great to be here with you again. I love coming to this event almost every year. On behalf of everyone at Target, our employees that are here today, and the more than 450,000 employees in our stores and our supply chain facilities across the country, I want to thank all of you for your leadership and your public service. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a quick moment to recognize the devastating wildfires in California. My heart goes out to the people of Los Angeles, and I want to extend my deepest gratitude to all the first responders and those in this room that are helping with the recovery and the relief efforts. You know, at Target, in addition to taking care of our teams on the ground, we're working to fast track essentials to the shelters in the area, and we're also financially supporting the relief efforts. I was born and raised in California, not far from where these fires are occurring, and the state and the people hold a really special place in my heart. So if you're able, please consider supporting the ongoing relief efforts, and for those of you, so many of you that are already doing so, thank you so much. Part of the reason I'm so proud to work at Target is the way we prioritize and show up in the communities across the country. Building vibrant communities is a goal we have in common with all of you. We're driven by our purpose to help all families discover the joy of everyday life. And we strive to create deep and lasting relationships that foster a sense of belonging for our team members and guests, the same people who live, work, and shop in the communities that you all lead. The Target team works to play an important role in your communities by listening and showing up to make a positive impact. Our community impact efforts are at the heart of what we do and how we help families discover joy. Let me give you some recent examples I'm really proud of. Just last month, nearly 2,200 of our stores and supply chain facilities, in addition to all of our employees at headquarters, made the holidays brighter and the ties to our local communities even stronger by participating in Target's 5th annual Great Gift Together. They picked, purchased, and wrapped holiday wish list items and shared over $1.5 million in gift cards with over 4,400 families in need. Another way we're helping bring joy to local communities is our Good Neighbor program, which has the Target employees picking up paintbrushes and hammers and gardening tools to help create lasting change in some of our country's biggest cities. In Chicago, for example, Target volunteers work together to revitalize You Can Chicago, building planter boxes, adding new community seating, and refreshing basketball courts. In New York, we partnered with Henry Street Settlement to pack hygiene kits, build garden tools, and create opportunities for over 10,000 people in need. And we partnered with Hands On Atlanta to paint murals, build pollinator gardens, and design an inclusive sensory room at the Usher Collier Elementary School. These events all add up to something much, much bigger. In 2023, Target employees logged more than 1 million volunteer hours across the globe. It's a milestone number for the retail industry, but it's the 8th time in our history that we've actually reached this number. More importantly, those 1 million plus hours represent tangible progress towards strengthening the communities, expanding economic opportunities, and reducing food insecurity. I know that if we combine Target's size and scale with your vision and your dedication and doing the hard work of being America's mayors, we're unstoppable. We can and will create an economy and a society where everyone thrives. So on behalf of the entire Target team, thank you for your service and for your partnership, and enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Our next panel, where coffee fuels economic development and community, and we need all the coffee we can get this morning. We'll explore how partnerships between businesses and cities can drive both community engagement and economic growth. We're joined by an exceptional panel of leaders who bring unique insights into how cities and businesses can collaborate to build stronger, more vibrant communities. We're excited to have a great panel here this morning. First, Executive Vice President, Chief Communications Office for Public Affairs at Starbucks Coffee, A.J. Jones.
Give it up for AJ.
Thank you. Our past president and the mayor of the great city of Miami, Francis Suarez.
Jimmy.
West Palm Beach Mayor, Keith James. Keith, thank you for being here this morning. And one of the biggest Bengals fans and a dear friend of mine, the great mayor of Cincinnati, Aftab Puraval. Us Bengals fans got to stick together, Mayor. Let's start with our past president, Miami Mayor Suarez. As we all know, mayors play a crucial role in driving economic growth in communities by not only implementing policies, but also fostering partnerships with businesses and creating environments that attract new investments to revitalize neighborhoods and develop the workforce. What strategies have you used to encourage commercial and economic growth in Miami, and what role have partnerships with retail businesses played in that strategy?
A tremendous partnership. I mean, they are sort of the labor force of any major city. And thank you for not mentioning the Dolphins. I very much appreciate that. And
I'll get to that.
No, my heart can't handle it. It took me 3 Starbucks coffees just to be up here smiling, okay? and I'm going to use Starbucks as an example, not because they're sponsoring this panel, not because I love their coffee, but not only because of it, but we're doing right now a partnership between Starbucks and GoPuff in delivering coffee quickly to people and a delivery mechanism. And we're working with them to make sure that the permitting process is efficient, effective, and quick, because we understand that every minute counts. And every minute counts in their delivery of coffee, but every minute counts also in our delivery of services to efficiently make sure that they can do what they do and be exceptional. And so we understand that partnership. At the same time, we're doing a race, a 5K today and this morning, in fact, with UAE. So another partnership that we're doing with a foreign country that's coming and sponsoring a race for kidney research in our city. So we're constantly fostering partnerships with private sector entities, public sector entities, other governments, as a means of, elevating issues or as a means of working to get people employed in companies that have a conscience like Starbucks.
We think, this is a great place, when we think that, studies have found that Starbucks can stimulate economic activity by increasing entrepreneurship, creating businesses, improving neighborhoods, and creating a community space for gathering to share ideas. How have you measured the success of economic development in your communities in partnership with retail as a unified approach? Mayor Puraval, what's going on in Cincinnati with respect to this?
Thank you so much, Mayor Ginther, to my fellow panelists and all of you in the audience. It's a real pleasure to be up here talking about economic development in these challenging times with our strong retail partners. In Cincinnati, we are challenged from an economic development perspective because of the pandemic and remote work via vibrancy, foot traffic, customers, population downtown, creating and recreating that density. And in partnership with some of our local retailers, we've studied our data to show that when we look at parking data, for example, we know that our parking numbers are higher on the weekends and in the evenings, even than our pre-pandemic levels. But there's a problem 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, as I'm sure is true for a lot of you mayors in the crowd. So what we did was we partnered with one of our local public-private partnerships, a redevelopment corporation, to get control of some vacant storefronts along our Main Street entertainment area and filled them with pop-up shops from minority, women-owned businesses to give them a significant discount on a brick and mortar to get their experience in order to understand how to grow that business in its infancy. But also, it's a win-win for the city because in addition to creating space for those small businesses, it also helps with public safety by having more people in the community on the street. It helps with vibrancy, it helps with walkability, and it helps with general economic vibrancy. So in addition to parking, we also just look at population. Are we attracting talent? Are we retaining talent? What does our population numbers look like, not just every census, but in the interim as well? And we're really encouraged that our population is growing, one of the few cities in the Midwest to see that. And what's really exciting is that in the past, when Cincinnati had grown, it was people from smaller cities coming to Cincinnati. Now, some of our biggest cities that we're getting people from are from LA and Chicago, other larger cities where people are looking for something different and finding it in Cincinnati. So, I would really focus from our perspective as we kind of judge these retail partnerships at parking. I'd look at population growth. I'd look at public safety. We can't expect people to be patronizing our neighborhoods and neighborhood businesses if it's not safe, or as mayors know, if it doesn't feel safe. And so maintaining that net of public safety, particularly in those retail areas, is also of critical importance. Back to you, Ginther.
Mayor James, you helped to lead a vibrant city in West Palm, and I know you're dedicated to retaining and attracting workforce. Talk to me a little bit about what you're doing there around some of your key economic development efforts.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me today. A couple of things that I think are important in order to build this partnership with the private sector. One is, as mayors, I think it's important for us to articulate our vision of what we want our city to be. Mine happens to be building a community of opportunity for all, inclusive growth. And you need to sit down with the potential partners and get them to understand it and to buy into that. The second is, as cities, it was important for us to put skin in the game. So in some of the underserved communities, we made significant investments, improving the streetscapes, making those communities more walkable, so that it would build the foundation, it would build a base so that the private sector would also want to join in with us. And as has been stated before, you also have to make sure that the cities feel safe, particularly those underserved neighborhoods, which have often been left out and left behind when you talk about economic development. We can talk more and more about what kind of resolutions and incentives, tax abatements, et cetera, but I think those three, articulating a vision, investing as a city ourselves and improving those communities, getting ahead of that, and then also making sure that our cities feel safe and those neighborhoods feel safe.
Starbucks has a great history of being really purposeful and intentional about your engagement with mayors and cities, particularly parts of our cities that maybe have been left out and left behind of our city's success. Talk a little bit about that relationship, that intentionality, how you've gone about that as a company, and talk a little bit about future growth plans and your vision for the future working with cities.
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, and I want to thank you all for allowing us to be here today. And more importantly, as you all know, this is my 5th time being before you, and I will never start, no matter how big my title is, without doing something my mama said, which is giving thanks to everyone who made it possible for us to be here today. So let's thank our leader, let's thank our chair, if you will, for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, but more importantly, all the people who made it possible for us to be here today. I am so excited to be here, most importantly, because this is our 20th year, Starbucks' 20th year partnering with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and its Business Council.
Amen.
Now, the reason why I bring this up is because to be able to have strong partnerships, to be able to ensure that you are investing in communities and building communities does not start overnight. It takes investment, dedication, and commitment over the arc of time, during times of challenge and also during times of prosperity. For us at Starbucks, there are a number of different ways in which we contribute, but before I even speak to that, I gotta make sure that I do 2 things. One, I wanna make sure that the community of New Orleans, and more importantly, the Mayor Cantrell of New Orleans, that we are giving not only thoughts and prayers, but I invite the business community to continue to invest in New Orleans. Because we recognize that oftentimes after tragedies, people start to worry and start to be concerned. Similarly situated is our good friend Mayor Karen Bass down in LA. All intents and purposes, it will not only take a rebuilding, but it will take a spirit of belief. And that can only come when the private sector has put down not only its time and its talent, but also its treasure. Now, as we think about what we do in terms of Starbucks and how we engage, there are 4 elements that I want to make sure that we bring apart. One, we recognize that in terms of Starbucks, yes, we have a store footprint and we can provide stores, provide opportunities, but it's the way we do it. We recognize that the most important thing that any community must have is anchors. And for us, we make sure that our stores are allowed to be anchors, not only for the prosperity and the commerce of selling coffee, but more importantly for the communities to be able to connect with each other and to have a flywheel around it. As I sit next to Mayor Suarez, he allowed for us to be able to build community stores that allow for us not only to uplift the community, but also ensure that at least 90% of the people who work in our stores are actually within a 10-mile radius. Amazing. Anchor. Amen. When I think about Mayor Parval and the work that we do in Cincinnati, specifically we have a store right in Hamilton County, a community store there too as well that's investing in how do we address hunger relief, specifically around our food share program. Anchor. When I think about our good mayor from West Palm, who you all know is looking fabulous today, he speaks very specifically. He speaks very specifically about the dynamic around safety and security. And while we have over 27 stores specifically within the West Palm area, one of the unique aspects is that we made sure that both not only safety and security, but educational opportunities that extend beyond just that of high school is made available. Anchors. So the reality is that one wants to think about what is the responsibility of a company. It is how do we ensure that we have anchors of business activity to allow for that to be the spin. The last piece I'll say is this. As we think about the role in Starbucks and our growth in Starbucks, it will come in public-private partnerships. Let me be clear. There is no way that we will be able to grow this country, grow this economy, and grow the GDP of this world without public-private partnerships. And that will be the essence of all that we do. So as I close, I remind you of this as mayors who are sitting in the audience. Don't think of Starbucks only as your great purveyor of coffee. We are, and we love that. Don't think of Starbucks only as the place in which we can put a store into your area. We are, and we love that. But think of us as you are designing your economic plans, how can we be an anchor to the flywheel of driving new opportunities in your community? And with that, I want to thank you all so much for allowing us to be here today, but more importantly, thank you for continually to inviting us in your communities and allowing us to be that little bit of hope of change that every person needs in their lives. Thank you again.
Yeah. I was just reminded that the next time I need to raise any money, I'm locking the doors and having AJ pass the plate. All right? All right, lightning round mayors. Great mayors
Energy overflow.
and
baby.
great business leaders are always thinking about the future. So Mayor Pureval, talk a little bit about your vision. We'll do a little lightning round here to stay on track, but talk to me about the future and what you envision for Cincinnati.
The future is bright for Cincinnati. We really are on a precipice, a crossroads of transformational change, due in part to the population growth that I was talking about, due to our access to fresh water with the Ohio River and the Great Lakes to the north, due to our manufacturing tradition and solid foundation, all of the, and obviously climate change and the inward migration of the population, all of those kind of macroeconomic factors come together for specifically Cincinnati and the Ohio Valley to be a destination for folks who are looking for a climate resilient community with huge opportunities for economic advancement and education. That's really the goal. How we put all of those ingredients together into a delicious recipe is really the challenge. But the good news for Cincinnati is all of those variables are working in our favor, and it's on us to harness it. And so in order to do that, we have been talking about potentially raising our earnings tax to put more money into our housing trust fund, to put more money into black businesses, to put more money into tourism, which has resulted in us being a final three city. There are 3 cities as a finalist to host Sundance in the future, and Cincinnati is one of them. So I'm excited about the future based on those opportunities and challenges, and I believe Cincinnati can be and will be the future destination of the country.
Mayor James?
We have a very exciting future ahead in West Palm Beach. We are in the midst of transformational growth in our city, becoming a center for financial services, artificial intelligence. We've got Vanderbilt University, which is building a graduate campus in our downtown in West Palm Beach. And we will be announcing probably in a couple of weeks a major technology firm that's setting up a headquarters in West Palm Beach. So between financial services, education, as well as tech firms coming to our city, it's a very exciting time. But again, my North Star, and this is what I continue to preach each and every day, is to make sure that this growth, this transformational growth, the benefits of that growth extend throughout my city, throughout those neighborhoods. And we are finding partners to help us improve an entrepreneurial ecosystem, to build creative entrepreneurial ecosystem. So the future is very bright for our city.
Mayor Suarez, what's next for this Miami miracle?
Oh, Miami for everyone. You know, I don't consider myself the chief executive officer. I consider myself the chief ecosystem officer. And that means that I'm responsible for the lives of every single human being that lives in my city. And so whether it's a child savings account or whether it's homelessness, we have a functional zero homeless plan. We want to be the first major American city to have zero homeless. You know, child savings accounts. We have first in family scholarship funds. If you're first in your family to go to college and you're a Pell Grant recipient, we pick up the tab. If you want to get a STEM degree and you're a Pell Grant recipient, we pick up the tab as a city. So unique programs like that, we obviously interact a lot with the private sector to make sure that opportunities are available and accessible to everyone.
AJ, if there's a mayor out here who isn't engaged and involved with Starbucks, I know that's hard to believe, but if there is maybe a new mayor or a mayor who's joining us for the first time, how can they get more engaged with Starbucks and embark on some of these great partnerships?
Wonderful. Well, first of all, if you're a new mayor and you haven't heard about Starbucks, we're a small coffee company located on your local corner. But one of the things I will share to you is that I have an incredible team who's actually here today. I'll ask for them to stand. You should make sure you see them. Many of you might know our great Kim. Kim, where's Kim at?
Right there.
Where's Cicely at? Where's Cotil at? There's an incredible team, if you will, of Starbucks partners who are constantly involved, if you will, in how we do our work. The second piece I would also like to share too as well is that if you're thinking about Starbucks and you're saying, well, we would like to have a store, I also would say, did you think about us in terms of how we can help you to generate economic business and opportunities? Let me speak about one program in particular. We are the only, and let me be clear, we are the only retail and food and beverage business that has our own community development financial institution fund. That is a $100 million fund that we specifically use. It's not grants. It's not something that we do for charity. This is coming out of the treasury of Starbucks, that we use that money to invest in communities to allow for small businesses to be able to be born. And we recognize that even if we don't have a store in your community, we can still contribute to the growth of your community using this fund. And it allows for both low-cost loans and also for financial education as well as technical assistance on how minority, women, small-owned businesses can all be able to be created and be established. We believe that that's key not only to creating vibrancy, but also to what Mayor Parval was saying around generating foot traffic and also continuity, if you will, within cities and localities. And this is something that's been highly successful in Columbus, where we've been able to not only support the ways in which, say for instance, a store just not too far from there in Akron, Ohio, where we did a partnership with LeBron James' foundation to allow for us to be able to drive economic opportunity, not only for the store, but for the community writ large. So I challenge to the mayors who do not know us and have not engaged with us, come see us because we got something for you.
That's right. Well, please help me thank this incredible panel and a great conversation this morning. To the mayors and AJ, thank you so much. And keep leading.
All right.
In every visit with congressional leaders and representatives from the White House, I've been asked how mayors are going to deal with the local challenges around land use policies. One senator was immediately supportive of our housing priorities, but emphasized his primary concern is that a historic investment in housing would sit idle, mired in antiquated zoning laws and slow permitting processes. He worried that projects would be killed by those resistant to change, those NIMBYs, or that funding would not be used in an efficient and effective manner because of restrictions that limit the number of units being built and where they can be built. Every time I've been met with the question of navigating challenges around land use policies, I answer that mayors are ready and willing partners to solve our nation's housing crisis. In fact, the responses from our recent housing survey reinforce that mayors are already meeting the moment. To help us all in this effort, we're joined today by the project director of the Housing Policy Initiative at Pew Charitable Trust. He guides research for Pew's Housing Policy Initiative, focusing on how home financing, the housing shortage, and land use regulations affect household well-being. Mayors, Business Council, please welcome Alex Horowitz. Welcome.
Good morning. Thanks to the conference for having me out. I work on issues that Mayor Ginther described, and the Pew Charitable Trust does policy work and research in the public interest. So half of renters are considered rent burdened at this point, spending more than 30% of income on rent. This is not historically normal. Rents are much, much higher than they were in the 20th century. A quarter of renters spending more than 50% of income on rent puts them at serious risk of outcomes like eviction, of outcomes like homelessness. The median rent is at an all-time high in dollar terms, but also as a share of income. Home prices are too. Normally in American history, it takes about 3 times income to afford a typical home. We're over 5 times income to afford a typical home. The housing shortage is the reason why. The US just doesn't have enough homes, especially near jobs, near amenities, near transit. We're short 4 to 7 million homes. And look, inventory for sale, we've been in a strong seller's market for almost 5 years. That means prices are going to rise quickly because anyone who's bought or sold a home knows when there aren't enough homes out there, prices go up. When there are, prices are stable. Well, we're still in a seller's market. Rents work just the same way. When there aren't enough homes for rent, rents rise quickly. That is a landlord's market. It's just the same as a seller's market. When there are enough homes, rent growth stays under control. That means incomes get time to rise, and so when incomes rise faster than rents, standards of living go up. When incomes rise more slowly because rents are going up so fast, standards of living decline. Well, our housing stock is not a great match right now for our households. 63% of US households have 1 or 2 people in them. But only 23% of our housing stock is multifamily. Our housing stock is not a great match for how we're living. There are a record number of empty bedrooms in the US today at the time that we have a record housing shortage and homelessness because our housing stock skews far more heavily to single-family detached than what our population needs. But there are solutions to these problems. Hey, 10 years ago, if I were here, I would have said, look, every analyst looking at this issue is going to tell you if there's more housing, that's going to improve affordability. But we don't really have the data because not enough jurisdictions have made those sorts of changes yet where we can do a natural experiment with good data. Well, enough jurisdictions have made changes that we can at least say we know what the answer is here. Minneapolis, New Rochelle, New York, Portland, Oregon, Tysons, Virginia, all of them made major changes to make it much easier to build apartments near commerce, or near transit. And all of them held rent growth very low to less than 1% a year, even while all 4 of those jurisdictions were adding more households as a share of their population than the US overall. The US did not. Rents soared 30% during this time period. When more housing comes online, especially well-located smaller housing, apartments, townhouses, duplexes, then we see good results. Affordability can improve, incomes get time to catch up to housing costs. When we don't, the opposite happens, and that's the experience the US overall is in. When we allow more housing, there is concern, right? What if this leads to displacement? But we see that not building is not an option. These are the 4 largest jurisdictions in the US, 4 largest cities in the US. New York, LA, Chicago all lost Black residents over the past 2 decades. They were adding an average of about 0.7% a year to their housing stock. Houston was adding more housing at more than double that rate to their housing stock during this time. They avoided the displacement that has plagued other jurisdictions. They were able to add Black residents. They added Hispanic residents at a faster clip. They've been adding so much housing, and they enacted land use reforms to make it easier to build. That held down prices, that held down rent growth, and it avoided displacement. The housing shortage does damage to everybody. It's driving up everyone's rents. It's making it harder to become a first-time home buyer. But, and you're seeing this first, unpublished, new analysis, the lowest income quarter of neighborhoods in the US saw rents rise the fastest in the past 7 years, 62%. When that happens, displacement is inevitable. Why? When there aren't enough homes, high-income residents who would live in high-income neighborhoods instead move into middle-income neighborhoods. Middle-income residents who would otherwise live in middle-income neighborhoods move into low-income neighborhoods. Low-income residents, nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go. So they end up tolerating enormous rent increases that they can't afford. We see displacement, we see homelessness, but most of all, we see rents rise the fastest in a shortage in low-income neighborhoods. There's a way to beat this. I'm showing you 6 jurisdictions that did see a lot of housing come online in 2023. A lot of that was multifamily that got started when interest rates were really low. And all of them saw enough housing come online to push down rents in absolute terms in 2023. So, most of that new housing, yeah, it was fancy. It was Class A. Had amenities in the building, multifamily, but contrary to expectations, we actually see Class C rents in those markets. Class C is older, more affordable housing, doesn't have the same amenities. Class C rents dropped more than Class A rents. Why is this? Well, when there's enough housing, it takes that pressure off of low-income neighborhoods, the older housing stock. Even though most of the housing coming online was Class A, that meant Class C dropped the most because low-income residents didn't have to fight for their homes anymore in the same way because there was enough housing for everybody. The Notre Dame economist Evan Mast, when he was at the Upjohn Institute, did research on migration chains, moving chains. He looked at what happens when a new fancy apartment building gets built in a high-income neighborhood. And yeah, you know what? Most of the people who move into it have high incomes. They're coming from high-income neighborhoods. But they vacate homes to move into that fancy apartment building. Well, the people who move into the homes they vacate tend to come from neighborhoods that have incomes that are a little lower. The homes those people vacate tend to come from neighborhoods that have incomes that are a little lower. The homes those people vacate are filled by people who come from neighborhoods that have incomes that are a little lower. And for each 100 homes we see get built in one of these new fancy apartment buildings in a high-income neighborhood, that frees up about 70 homes in neighborhoods with below median incomes. Quick aside, what does this look like in practice? So my wife and I were foster parents for 7 years and change. And a little boy came to stay with us, and he'd been living in a homeless shelter for a little while before that with his mother. So while he was with us, she was still living in the shelter, but then an apartment opened up in low-income housing. She moved into it. That helped her deal with the issues that had made her unable to care for her son, and she was able to turn those around pretty fast once she was stably housed. And after 14 months with us, he got to go back to her. Success story. He's back with her. It's worked out, still there. That was 5 years ago. So how did her apartment in low-income housing open up? Well, we used the same methodology that I just told you about to see how it happened, public records. Shortly before she moved in, somebody else moved out into private sector, kind of working class neighborhood. How did that home open up? Somebody moved out into another apartment in a middle class neighborhood. How did that home open up? Somebody moved out of that apartment into a new fancy market rate apartment building. His mother could never have afforded to move into that new fancy market rate apartment building with the pool on the roof. But it got her out of a homeless shelter where she had been living for more than a year, and it got her son back after 14 months in foster care. Housing markets are interrelated. When there's enough housing for everybody, good things happen. When there's a shortage, it hurts the most vulnerable among us the most. This is how homelessness works. There are jurisdictions in the US that have seen homelessness drop in recent years. There are jurisdictions that have seen homelessness rise. We're at a record homelessness level. You saw the new data from HUD last month, 770,000 people in the most recent count. Well, homelessness tracks rent growth really closely. We know rent growth is driven by supply. The jurisdictions that saw homelessness rise fast during this 5-year period we looked at were those where rents rose a lot because there wasn't enough housing to keep up with demand. There are jurisdictions that saw homelessness go down during this time period because they held rent growth low enough so that incomes could keep up. That means that homelessness is under our control. When there's enough housing for everybody, we can push down homelessness. There's not much way to reallocate our way out of a shortage. If there aren't enough homes, there aren't enough homes. And somebody loses out, and it's the people who are most vulnerable. Minneapolis, I flagged before, is a jurisdiction that made big changes. They eliminated their parking minimums. They made it easy to build apartments near commerce and transit. Well, Minneapolis was building housing at triple the rate of the rest of Minnesota over this 5-year period. That meant rent growth was much lower in Minneapolis during this 5-year time period. In 2017, you had to earn 80% of the area median to afford the median rent in Minneapolis. By 2023, you only had to earn 66% of the area median to afford the median rent in Minneapolis. Affordability improved because supply came online. Unsurprisingly, homelessness went down in Minneapolis at the same time it was going up in the rest of Minnesota. When there's enough housing for everybody, we see good things happen. We are seeing jurisdictions make changes. I will say it is not all jurisdictions, and some of the changes are small, but examples are accessory dwelling units. This is a small secondary home on the same property as a single-family home. Legalizing 2 to 4 units on most lots. Jurisdictions like Charlotte, like Austin, like Minneapolis, Spokane. Legalizing multifamily housing in commercial areas. That's really what all 4 of those jurisdictions I showed you before did. New Rochelle, Tysons, Portland have all made it easier to build multifamily near commerce. Simplifying permit approval processes, making them administrative, making them by right, making them quick. Permitting is a way to block housing, and permitting can be faster, it can be slow, and that can make every bit of difference in terms of whether there's enough housing out there to avoid the sorts of woes that are plaguing many US cities. Limiting parking mandates. Austin became the biggest city in the US to eliminate its parking requirements altogether at the end of 2023, but we're increasingly seeing places reduce or eliminate parking requirements. This makes multifamily housing much more feasible. It also is good for business. And legalizing micro units, so that means people can live in dorm-style housing or they can share homes, ending limits on how many unrelated people can live together, because that's a very affordable way to live. Sometimes these are called Golden Girls laws. So accessory dwelling units have rents that are usually affordable to people earning less than the area median income because they're small. These are basement apartments, backyard apartments, garage apartments. They cost less, and they simply just don't affect the landscape in the same way. It's a way to add housing quickly by renovating a basement or renovating a garage. We're seeing lots of jurisdictions adopt these, but sometimes there's a poison pill in them that can make them hard to build, such as a discretionary use permit or off-street parking requirements for the ADU, or an owner occupancy requirement, which can make them hard to finance for the main house. Jurisdictions that have eliminated parking mandates or reduced them see that most of the housing that gets built couldn't have been built before because of parking mandates. Parking mandates are so high that they end up affecting what gets built. Now look, most buildings still include some off-street parking anyway because it makes sense, because there's demand for it. But with that flexibility, decisions about building can be driven by consumer demand, by housing needs, not by a perception that everyone is going to have 2 cars per apartment. We see people share cars. We see couples share cars, especially when walkability is improved and they can live closer to the places they go every day. Minneapolis, even though they've added housing, they've seen vehicle miles traveled go down because most of the housing is near commerce and it is near transit. One particular area I want to flag, because overall office to residential is not going very well, is that office to dorm style housing works a lot better. This is an example that we published in October with the architecture firm Gensler looking at Denver. By having small dorm style units, 120 to 190 square feet, around the perimeter of the buildings, everybody has a nice big window, but then all of the amenities, all of the plumbing is in the middle, makes conversions from office space to housing much, much more cost effective, and it can add a lot more housing, roughly 3 times as many units per floor. And this also works well as transit-oriented development. The rents for these units are projected to come in about half of the area median. So it's only been about 50 years since the US had very, very little homelessness. Homelessness was extremely rare from the end of the Great Depression until the mid-1970s, because we had a lot of low-cost housing in cities. What at that point in time were called single-room occupancies made up about 1/10 of the rental stock in major cities. But as those got pushed out by zoning codes and building codes, homelessness soared. We can bring back a much nicer version of that housing, and the fact that we've got over 1 billion square feet of vacant office space in the US means this is a pretty good time to do it. But office buildings just don't convert that well into apartments unless they were built before World War II and have shallower floor plates and windows that operate. New ones convert much better into dorm-style housing, but our zoning codes and building codes often block that from happening. The subsidies required to have these units be affordable to someone earning about 35 to 40% of the area median income are drastically lower than what we're spending using LIHTC dollars, using community development block grant dollars for new build apartments today for a studio. A studio in a city like Denver is going to run about $400,000 to build affordable to a low-income resident. One of these units costs about $123,000. But there's private sector money that would come in too, because there is net operating income. It does make sense to invest in these. So the subsidy needed in Denver came in at about $23,000 per unit versus $300,000 for a new build studio. That means you can get 13 times as many units for the same money. And it's something to do with our vacant office stock, which isn't converting that well to regular apartments, but converts really well to dorm-style housing and can quickly add many units near transit. I'm going to wrap up with a bit about public attitudes about land use reforms. I recognize that not every person who comes to a community meeting is thrilled with the idea of adding more housing. However, the academic research that's been done does show that the people who show up at community meetings to speak about housing, who comment on social media, are very, very different than their community overall. Their views, attitudes toward housing are not really reflective usually of the community. They're demographically different as well. And overall, they're unrepresentative of community sentiment, because building more housing is fairly popular. We tested 10 different reforms that would add a lot of housing supply in a nationally representative survey of 5,000 people. We see that overwhelmingly they're supportive of reforms to allow more homes. They're especially supportive of reforms to allow more homes in commercial areas and near transit. On single-family blocks, still net positive, but not overwhelmingly so, the way that they are if the housing is near commerce and near transit. This is also true across party lines. Red is Republican, blue is Democrat, and purple is independent. There aren't many issues that test like this across party lines these days. This is one of them. The housing shortage is doing real damage. It is a defining issue of our time, but we've got the tools to solve it. There are jurisdictions that are leading the way, and this is not intractable. We can get there by implementing reforms. More funding would be helpful, but land use is the crux of the issue, and we can make a big difference and solve this problem that's plaguing our communities. Thank you.
This concludes this morning's general session. We stand adjourned.